Hello, I'm Linda, and my question is, what time of year do you find you get the most business for planning?
Okay, so Linda, the best time to get leads. There are some specific times of the year that it tends to work better than others. So some of those are around your public holiday time. So when people are thinking about things, and obviously the classic one here has got to be Valentine's Day. So around Valentine's Day is when people are thinking about weddings simply because they've either been proposed to or they're thinking about getting married around that time. So you will find that there's always an increase of inquiries around any of those big sort of holiday moments. The other one is the beginning of the year. It's always the same. It's cold here in the UK in January, as we all know, and that tends to be your prime time, because if you look at a lot of your, traditionally, if you look at a lot of your big bridal shows, they're always done in the colder months. They never do the bridal shows in August or July, because that's when the events are actually happening. So your leads always tend to come at that time in the new year, and it's the same for us too. We know that we're going to get an influx of inquiries in the new year because everyone's done their New Year's resolutions. Everyone's gone, I'll leave everything until after Christmas. After Christmas hits, that second week in January, that's when it gets busy. So my advice is when you're looking at doing your marketing and that side of things, you want to be looking at planning your marketing in November, making sure that you've got everything ready to hit straight away as soon as the new year happens, because that is your prime time for getting your leads. You will find most people in the wedding industry will be planning all their marketing, doing all of their marketing, sending out all of their big promos and that side of things. It'll all happen in January, and it will just get busier from there on in. You tend to find anything from May through to September, not your best months for getting leads. It's not your best months to try and generate leads that way. You're still going to get them come in, because that's not to say that brides aren't going to be looking for your services, because everyone gets proposed to at different times, everyone starts their planning at different times. But traditionally, don't waste your time and effort between May and September putting too much into marketing. Obviously, you're still going to continue your social media. You need to do that on a daily basis. That goes without saying. You know, we tweet every day, we Facebook every day, we try and put stuff on Pinterest every day. Not quite so good on Instagram, but you know, you've got to try and make sure that you keep that up on a daily basis. When it comes to October, your weddings will start to slow off. Everything starts to slow down. November, well, that can go either way. That often is quieter for weddings, but then if you also do other events, so if you're doing sort of corporate events as well as weddings, then obviously you're going to have your Christmas parties starting to get busy. So we tend to also look at all of our marketing in October and November as well, because it's traditionally quieter months for the events. So what you've got to look at is when wedding season isn't happening, that's when you do the majority of your marketing. When wedding season is happening, you should A, be too busy to be able to deal with it, and B, it's going to fall on deaf ears. And that's what it comes down to. Does that answer your question? Good, excellent.
Hi, my name's Diane. My question is, as someone who's not originally from the UK, what would be your best advice for getting into the industry in the UK?
Diane, you're asking me about what it's like to break into an industry that you don't know, whether that is being as a foreigner or whether that is just simply breaking into a new industry. The two are pretty much the same thing, so it doesn't really matter which country you're in. Still breaking into a new industry, you're still going to be looking at doing the same things. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to think to yourself, wedding planner, wedding stylist, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that you have is your team. So when you're breaking into the industry, your best friends will become other wedding suppliers. Now, that might be florists, that might be venues, that might be designers, it might be caterers, it might be marquee companies, but essentially, you're only as good as your team. So without that team around you, you have no business, because you don't have an actual product. You're a planner or you're a stylist, so there's no product as such. So that's the first thing you need to do when you're breaking into the industry, because what you will find happen is once you build that team of suppliers, they are going to be your biggest advocates. They're actually going to be the people that help you get the business. Other things that you can do, you need to be very visual. So for example, you're taking one of our courses at the moment. Okay, so throughout the course, you can use the course to build up your portfolio. And when I say that, with the different unit projects that you're doing, with the different assignments that you're doing, put it out on social media. Let people see what you're actually doing. Show them how creative you are. Because at the end of the day, you don't have a physical business half the time when you come on board as a student, and that is the ideal opportunity to be approaching suppliers, be putting things together, and let people see what you do. We live in a very visual industry. So when you're breaking into the industry, not everybody needs to know that you're new. You know you're new, but you don't need to tell everybody else that you're new. It's all about confidence and how you come across. So from that perspective, you need to be out there, putting yourself out there and really showing people what your style is. Now your style could be anything. It might be rustic, it might be vintage, it might be festival brides, it might be, I don't know, DIY. There's lots of different avenues that you could go down. But when you're breaking into the industry, it's very much about showing people your unique side, why they should buy from you, who you are and what you do. Social media, as we've mentioned, is big. That is the hands down easiest way for you to start getting your name out there and breaking into the industry. But you've got to have a voice. If you don't have a voice, there's no point. Because although social media is free and it's great, it's also saturated with other people as well. So how do you make yourself stand out? It's like, I mean, yes, you can be controversial, but be careful with that because that can actually open a can of worms and that's not always a good way of doing it. But you've got to look at the different social media platforms that you've got and know which ones your clients are going to go to. So for example, for me, I know that most of you guys will follow me on Facebook. I actually don't do the Facebook page, shock horror, sorry. It's actually Zoe and Chris who tend to do the Facebook page. I do Twitter because that's more industry based. So what you've got to figure out is you've got to know where your potential client is going. And that's the key to this. Where does your potential client shop? Where does she look at magazines? Which blogs does she read? And if you know who your target client or your potential bride is, you will know where they go. And that is the best place to start off in getting your name out there. But like I say, have a strong message, know what it is that you want to say, know the different ways to use the different social media networks, and be true to whoever it is that you say you are. So if you decide that you're doing DIY, don't then start talking about luxury weddings. You've got to, you're going to pick an area and you're going to stick to it, and you're going to be an authority on that subject. This is such a big subject and I'm really taking too long to answer this question, but there is another point to that as well. It doesn't matter whether or not you're new or whether you've been in the industry 10 years. You still have a voice and you still have an opinion. So one of my other big tips for you is to position yourself as an expert. Get yourself out there. So let's say, for example, that you specialise in festival weddings. And I'm picking this because it's an easy one. I would then go and approach the blog Festival Brides and say to them, I specialise in this area, let me write some articles for you. Have some articles pre-written and send them and show them how good you are. Because trust me when I say blogs want content, because they have to write every single day and it's hard work. But can you see, you're setting yourself up as an expert then, and people will get used to seeing your name out there. I mean, there's a million other things you can do as well, but they're probably the easiest things you can do when you're breaking into the marketplace because you have more time. When you're new, you do have the time to write these articles and spend time finding out who those articles would best be published by. But it also gives you a point of reference to potential clients that you can say, have you seen my new article on Twitter? I'm one of the featured writers on Festival Brides. It gives you something to put you out there as the expert, so people don't think of you as being new. They just think of you as being the expert within your field.
Hi, my name's Louise. I was wondering, out of all your students that you have, do most open their own businesses or do a lot try to find a job in already established businesses?
You're fairly new to the industry, or you're looking at getting into the industry, correct? Okay, and your question to me is whether or not most of our students go on to run their own business or whether they get into the industry. Well, it's an interesting one. Initially, when people come on board, a lot of them aren't sure what it is they want to go or what direction they want to go in. And what you will find is some find that direction as they make their way through the course. But traditionally, most people are wanting to start their own business. And it's for that reason that we've split our courses up a bit more now. So our basic level courses don't have any of the business information in them, for the simple reason that they're aimed more at people wanting to get into the industry, get work experience, and then eventually get a job with somebody else in the industry, whether that's a wedding planner, whether that's an event management company, or whoever that might be. So that's why we've split the courses up in that way. Our diploma and our advanced diploma courses have all the business units, all the marketing units, etc. And 75% of our students go onto those courses. So if you look at it in those terms, probably 75% of them want to go on and start their own business, and it's much smaller minority. But we are now putting into place a lot more partnerships with people for work experience. And that's not just for the guys that actually want to start going into it and working for somebody else. That's also for the guys that want to run their own business, because there's nothing like hands-on experience. So we are setting up a lot of new partnerships. We've actually just put one together here at the show with Platinum and Raspberry, who are now offering our students work experience to go and work with them for a week, so they can see what it is like, what the reality of the job is, what the hours are like, etc., etc. So I hope that answers your question.
Hi, my name is Dee. My question is, what's the best way to get experience as a destination wedding planner?
Okay, destination weddings are an interesting one because you have to know the actual country that you're wanting to do the destination weddings in. And to get experience in that is actually not that easy. The biggest tip I can give you is actually taking 6 months out and going and working within a venue within the destination that you want to work in. So let's say, for example, Turkey. If you've decided that you wanted to specialise in destination weddings in Turkey, the easiest and the best way of actually getting any experience is to actually go to one of the venues and work there. Because there's lots of research you can do on the country, no problem there. You can certainly do all the research that you need to on the suppliers, but the other part of that is you actually need to go out there and physically meet the suppliers that you're going to be working with in that country, because they all work in very different ways. We did an event years ago in Japan, and it was so different doing a wedding in Japan. It was even down to things like the different colours you can use, the different traditions, etc. So where one colour is perfectly acceptable in the UK, it is totally not acceptable in Japan. So it's little things like that, the customs, the traditions, etc., etc. Yes, there's a certain amount that you can read in books, but if you're going to do destination weddings, you've got to really know the country that you're going to. And getting experience in that is actually very hard because there aren't many destination wedding planners here in this country. There's one in particular who will give you a lot of advice and a lot of free advice, and she's on our advisory board, and that's Jane Riddle from Plan for Perfection. She does a lot of destination weddings, and she will be able to give you a lot more insight into it than I can, because it is not my specialist area. But as I say, the one thing I do know is you need to spend time, you need to really understand the suppliers over there and go over and meet those suppliers, because suppliers in different countries work in a very different way to the way we work here, especially in European countries. A lot is done on handshakes. They don't tend to work very well with contracts and things like that. Then you've got to also take into account exchange rates and that type of thing as well, and that comes into play when you're talking about your fee, when you're talking about the fees of the suppliers, etc., etc. So there is a lot to be learned. But my biggest tip, go and speak to Jane Riddle, because she can really help you more than I can on this one.